Prisons Minister, former Tory Prisons Minister, Anne Widdecombe. Anne, thank you very much for joining me. So, Anne, in your view, though, UK prisons, do you think they're too soft?
I don't think soft is the right word. They're utterly purposeless. And I said this, 20 years ago. I mean, the centrepiece of my party conference speech when I was Shadow Home Secretary in 1998, having been Prisons Minister and known fully well what was going on and visited then every single prison that then was. The point is that what we should have is an ordinary working day in which the prisoner spends a full day, as you and I understand that to mean, either in education or in the prison workshops or in a mixture of the two. And that is the order in very, very few of Her Majesty's prisons. In most of them, there is intense idleness. And of course, if you come in through the prison gates and you spend some years in idleness, what do we expect people to do when they leave the prison gates except to continue in idleness?
Well, that's exactly what Winston was saying, actually. But he said this. Winston pointed out that there wasn't really enough jobs for the people to do anyway. So in the prison, they've got limited jobs, so not everyone can get off their backside and work, even if they wanted to.
The stupid thing about this is that when you ask ministers why aren't there more job opportunities, they will always quote to you resources. But in fact, if you ran prison workshops, and I've been saying this for years, like any little independent enterprise, so that the prisoners make something or whatever it is, and any profits from that come back into that workshop. They don't go off to the exchequer or get counted against the prison budget or whatever it might be. And if only we saw prison workshops in that sense, instead of looking at them as a taxpayer-funded, somehow optional extra, we'd make an awful lot of progress. But some prisons ministers have focused on this. When he was Justice Secretary, Michael Gove focused on rehabilitation. But they're gone. They're gone in a couple of years. And then the whole thing just carries on.
Well, they keep getting rid of their ministers. Let's hope that they can be sensible and try and hold on to the ones they've got now for these few years. They've got to try and convince us that their plan will work. Let's hope it does. But the government would say that figures show that the number of prisoners reoffending has actually fallen just over 25%. So something is working. I mean, they might think that they're doing a good job.
Well, there may have been a slight fall in recidivism, but we've still got a very high rate of recidivism, particularly if you look at some other countries. And the fact is, it's no good saying that the fall in recidivism proves that prisons are working. Prisons work on several levels, and the one they always work on is that while they've got people in custody, lo and behold, they can't be committing crime. So that does protect the public. But the public need the longer-term protection that when those people are released, they don't create more victims. And that actually means using time in prison. And as I said in that party conference speech, anybody who comes into prison for any more than 6 months and who enters the prison gates unable to read and write, and 75% at that time were in that category. 3/4 were in that category. Should, when they left the prison gates, be able to read and write. And that seems to me so fundamental.
Well, I'm going to bring Winston in. I mean, Anne's making perfect sense to me. Does that... I mean, why is Anne not prisons minister now? What do you think, Winston? She's got a point, right?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is that the mental health issues within the prison system is up to 60%, around 60% of all prisoners suffer from mental health issues. And actually, it's all well and good telling them, we're going to put these activities on, we're going to put education on, we're going to put work on for them. But actually, if mentally they're not stable, if they've not had therapy, if they've not had to resolve trauma that they've been through whilst growing up and what's led them to be in prison in the first place, then actually the outward output of actually being in employment and education won't work. And for me, I had that internal drive that I wanted to move on. But not everyone's going to have that. So, we've got to work on their mental state and resolving the issues which actually led them to be in the prison before we can start saying to them, go out and start, go and get an education, because they might not be in a position mentally to do that.
Sorry, Anne, you go.
Yeah, I was going to say, I need a lot of convincing that the main reason that people are in prison is because of their mental health. That will apply to some, undeniably. And I'd also be the first to acknowledge that for those to whom it does apply, the service doesn't always come up to scratch. But the vast majority of people who are in prison are not there because they have a mental health problem. They're there because, and let's face it, they have seen crime as the solution to whatever difficulties they had. And I'm interested that Winston was there for marijuana possession. He must be one of the very few who actually end up in prison for that, because, we're remarkably soft on, at least small amounts of marijuana possession we're remarkably soft on. In fact, 80% of all acquisitive crime is because of drugs. And if we crack down on the drug scene, we might actually get a real impact on crime in general. So I'm not going to buy into the mental health. I mean, as soon as I say we need activity, Winston comes in and says, but that's not enough. You must do something else before it. No, you have to do it all, but no excuses. If you've committed a crime, you go into prison. The prison regime should be purposeful. If they're not purposeful, all they do is result in idleness and more crime.
Well, that's Winston. Do you respond to that?
I would say that, go back to your point about 80% of all crime is around drugs, and you're saying about crack down on crime. Been trying to crack down on crime for over 50 years. It's not working. There needs to be a rethink on the whole drugs laws and the whole how you're actually going to police drugs and legalisation, particularly of marijuana. I know I was convicted of it, but the actual convictions of marijuana and these lower end drugs, it's not working. You can walk down any street in London and there are people that are smoking weed. There are people that are using these drugs. The thing of what we've got at the moment with the drug policies, it's not working. This war on drugs is not working. Are you saying crack down on drugs? More and more drugs, and people are taking more and more drugs are being put onto the streets. So that's not actually the answer.
But Anne's point was that the majority of people in prison are usually with drug-related offences. So if we tackle that element,
yeah. But then if we tackle that and actually talk about the policies around drugs and seeing what these people are going into prison for, then that resource can go elsewhere. They can go into sorting out education, sorting out poverty, sorting out mental health issues. So it's not as straightforward as that.
And final word to you.
I really can't let Winston get away with talking about legalising. If you legalise the soft drugs, all the drugs barons' profits will be in the hard drugs. And if you look at what happened in Amsterdam, where there's been a study, when soft drug use goes up, which nearly always follows legalisation, so does hard drug use. And that is the big danger. So, no, I am not in favour of legalising. And as for, the war against drugs has failed, we've never really fought that war against drugs. I mean, another thing that I did when I was Shadow Home Secretary was to actually make proposals for actually fighting the drugs, because we don't. We're very soft. I'm amazed that Winston ever ended up in prison for it.